I want to welcome David Minear. David Minear is the CEO of Construction Monitor, a company his dad founded in 1989 to help businesses succeed by providing targeted information. He helped Construction Monitor grow from providing hundreds of building permit leads in a single state to over 33,000 each week from 89 areas across the United States. David never misses early morning basketball, and while earning his Bachelor of Business Administration from Southern Utah University, he walked onto the baseball team and helped them to a record of 6-54. Yes, that's 6 wins and 54 losses. He is married to Heather and has 5 kids. I will now turn the time over to David. Enjoy.
All right. Thank you, Madeline. Can you hear me all right? Let's just make sure. All right. I see head shaking. Yeah. So thank you. I'm excited to be here with you today. And it's been fun for me to not only consider some of the things that we've done as a company, but to be able to research even further some of these remote tools and some of the many great possibilities that they provide to all of us. As a small company, it really helps to be able to really compete on a higher level if we want, because of all these remote tools that are out there. And so I'm grateful for this opportunity to be with you today. And like Madeline said, please, if you have any questions, ask them. And I think she's going to save them for the end, but either way, I'll be happy to answer them. And I'm looking forward to this being a little bit interactive. And I really want to share today with you some of our experiences here at Construction Monitor and how we have been using these remote tools that I'll be sharing with you today. Again, Dave Minear, Construction Monitor, and there's my email address, and I'll have that on the last slide though. So if anybody has any questions and would like to follow up with me, they're welcome to do that. I just want to start by a little bit of an introduction and background. I'm the CEO of Construction Monitor, a business that my father started back in 1989. We were partners since 1998, and in 2014, I had the opportunity to buy the business from him. And he's still around, and I talk to him all the time. He's not involved in the day-to-day of the business, but he's a great consultant and still has a lot of things to say, and lives just a half a block from me in actually Fargo, Utah, where I live. You know, we've been, I mentioned this a little bit in the introduction the other day, but we've had a hybrid team since about 1995. When we first started, my uncle opened up an area for our business in the Construction Monitor in Montana, of all places. And from that point, really, we were kind of hybrid and distributed. And we've learned from the days of just phone and email back then to all these tools. We've taken advantage of many of them as we've grown throughout the years. This is our 31st year in business, and we're just having a great time. And of course, who would have ever foreseen the virus going around right now? And that certainly changed things. We've seen a little bit of a hit to our business, but we're hanging in there and going strong and utilizing some of these tools to work remotely. Right now, we're about 90 to 100% remote since March. We could be 100%. The way our office is structured, we actually have, our office can be separated into private offices. So a few of us still come in here just for convenience, and most of our team right now, about 90%, is working at home. Talking a little bit going back to 2004 when I got my first Gmail account, and then in 2007 especially, we were using an in-house server, and I remember I had a big problem with spam, and I was having such a hard time configuring that server. And just looking around and having a little bit of experience with Gmail, I noticed that Google had a company branded where I could get my email address, my @constructionmonitor.com email address, through Google, it's G Suite now, but back then it wasn't. And so I signed up for that. And then just about a year after that, we moved from an on-premise CRM to a hosted, what they call SaaS, software as a service application, called Salesforce.com. And that's one of the biggest in the industry. And there are others like that. But since that time, we've really seen these tools. And there's a couple things I like about that. Is these tools that are online, they're available to all of us. And so it used to be you had to set up all the infrastructure and get everything. And as a small company, that was difficult. But now you just subscribe per user and you have access to this enterprise level infrastructure. And Salesforce is a good example of that. And so are these remote tools. But ever since about 2008, our company has done our best, wherever possible and appropriate, utilize these web-based cloud applications And it's really paid off now where we've been forced into remote work, but we've seen the benefits of that for quite some time. At the end, I'm going to talk to you. In 2014, we switched our phone system. We had some just plain old telephone lines, POTS lines that we used, and we had a few issues with that, especially the cost, having to pay long distance fees and stuff. And so we switched to a VoIP application called RingCentral. And it's a lot like some of these other applications we're going to talk to you about today. But since then, we've been completely cloud-based with our phone system. And they've since integrated other things like video meetings and chat. And I'll show that to you. Since that's the one we use, I have the best examples of that and probably know a little bit more about that. But I'm not saying it's any better or any worse than these others. And I have a slide where we'll kind of talk about which would be best for you based on some information that I have. With the COVID-19, with the virus, of course, we've been kind of forced to remote, whether we like it or not. And this applies across the entire world. And you've seen that as strains have been placed on technology. And in the old days, we'd have our meetings in person, and then we'd follow up using email. We're going to talk a little bit about email. You know, we traveled to conferences for in-person experiences and learning. Now we're trying to replicate what we had before and searching for the best tools to facilitate this within our teams. It's different. Remote work is definitely different, and there's articles on both sides, whether it's better or worse, but it is different. But managed correctly, it can be a real advantageous thing for all of our companies, and especially now when we're forced into that situation. We're going to talk about some of those tools that are available for the conferencing and collaborating portion of remote work. And to begin with, just to talk a little bit about email. Really, you know, email, and I put the bane of your existence, but email has been around for so long, and so many of us are so familiar with it, that really we're using it wrong. It's not so much email, but it's the way we're using it. And how many of us kind of watch our email all day long, either watching it or we do things, but then we always come back to check it every few minutes, every 15 minutes, every 30 minutes. Some of you are probably a lot more organized than me and might only check it once or twice a day. But we check it too often. It turns into our to-do list. So we go through it every morning and all the time trying to get to the panacea of inbox zero, right? Zero in our inbox. But a lot of us look like the graphic there and have thousands in our inbox. And again, it's not email that's a problem, it's the way we've been using it. But our employees are spending larger and larger portions of their day, not just our employees, but ourselves. And it's becoming our primary electronic habitat. And, you know, so what are some of the communication collaboration guidelines that you've set for yourself and your company? How do you handle that? Are your employees, are you spending the right amount of time in email, or is it getting a little bit out of control? So come along some of these things that help us kind of get away from email and to better manage our remote work. And let's see, there we go, okay. So I just want to start with the most popular one that most of you know the most about, and this is Zoom. And Zoom is always was a dedicated conferencing product. We've heard so much about it since the virus, because really it has been, and the gap's closing a little bit, but it's the easiest way to jump on a video conference. And since all of you are on here on this one, you at least know enough to be able to get onto a Zoom conference, right? So we're not going to go over any of the basics on this, and there's some great trainings on Zoom where you can take a little deeper dive, and Mike Sarles actually has a demo that he did, a 41-minute demo explaining everything about it, I think just a couple days ago, and I'll post that link. But there's a lot of resources to learn more, but Zoom is kind of the first one that is there, and it's easy. It's free for face-to-face meetings, and you can even do group meetings limited to up to 40 minutes. And it has some cool things where you can get in with a group, and I got to try this in a remote work class I took recently, but you can get in a group and they can break you out into rooms. So you have 100 people on there, you can break out into rooms of 10 people and have little mini discussions like that, and then you pop back into the main room and can continue the presentation that you were doing. That's the breakout rooms. There's polls, chats, and all sorts of different nonverbal feedback so that you can know your audience engagement. And of course, it's one click to join from anywhere. Now, maybe I have been sharing my screen that whole time. Let's just make sure. Sorry, let me hold on. I think I haven't been sharing my screen. I'm going to do that. They're already doing it, but maybe this will fix it. There we go. All right, I apologize for that. I haven't been sharing my slides, but that's all right. I've been telling you the same thing anyways. So we're just on Zoom here. One click to join from anywhere. It's very easy. It's very simple. And make sure, okay. Madeline, you can see my screen now, right?
Yes, David, I can see it now.
Thank you. I apologize for that. All right, one click to join from anywhere. It's very easy. And even on their homepage, you see you can schedule a meeting, join a meeting, and host a meeting. Simple, easiest way to go. If I had to tell somebody which one to use, if they just wanted video conferencing, I would say Zoom, and for good reason. It is easy. They do have some add-ons. The next slide, we'll talk a little bit about webinar, but they've got Zoom phone. And as we talk a little bit more about, especially the solution that we use, there's this whole idea of unified communications as a service. So you're able to combine meetings, chat, business-grade telephone systems into one. And all of these different programs we're talking about today have started in different places. Some have started with video conferencing, some have started with chat, but they're all ending up in this unified area where they're all adding what they didn't have before. So like Zoom had video, now they're adding, they've got the chat, as you can see in here, and they even have a Zoom call. So they're all coming together, and you'll see that. And as we move on to, so Zoom Rooms, Zoom Webinar and Events, and more. In the webinar version, you get a few upgrades. These aren't free, you have to pay for it, but in the webinar version, as you can see here, I've got a list, 100 interactive video panelists, and then plans ranging from 100 to 10,000 view-only attendees, and then some advanced host controls that do make a difference if you're hosting big, large webinars. You're going to need some of these things. But that's a good example of some of the advanced features of Zoom and how you can take that to the next level. Even the live streaming, like you see unlimited audiences on Facebook Live and YouTube, and interacts with those. Now, one of the other ones after Zoom that I want to talk about is Microsoft Teams. This is again, and I'll show you a little bit here. We don't use this, so I've only got a few samples of me talking actually to my daughter on here. But here's the interface, and it's going to look like a lot of these. They break them down a little bit different, but you've got a chat interface, you've got a way to make calls, and you've got a way to share files. Now, some of the things in Microsoft Teams where it shines is in the integration with the Office applications. You see I pop up right there, and you can pull up any of the Microsoft applications and integrate those really well. But a lot of the same things. It's easy. There's a free version, especially right now, but it works best. It works best if you're an organization that's already pretty heavily invested into the Microsoft applications. But they have, they're gaining on Zoom. Everybody, Zoom's the leader, and all the rest of these are trying to gain on them. It does have excellent integration with the MS Office, and it's included if you have a subscription, which I think like I do, it's $5 a month, and it's included with that. So that's about the same pricing as some of these other suites. And since you get so much, it's not a bad deal. One other thing that I want to talk about, and this applies to all these applications, is they've built these APIs, these integrations. And so as you'll notice on here, but Zoom, you can even integrate Zoom with Microsoft Teams. So if you want to pull up a Zoom meeting in Microsoft Teams, you can do that. And all these applications talk a lot of times to each other and to all these other different applications that are available for all sorts of different things, from to-do lists to webinars, mind mapping, I mean, Trello, all these different things. They integrate really well with one another. All right. Now the next one we're going to talk about, and sorry I have to go through these so quickly, we're limited in time. We'll just get an overview of each and not a deep dive, but is Google Meet. Now if this isn't confusing, I don't know what was. Now, one thing I forgot to say on Microsoft Teams is you may have a hard time logging into it because they're strict about personal email, company email, and the biggest complaint I've heard from people using Microsoft Teams is getting the right login credentials down and getting in there. With Google Meet, this has changed so many times. It's a little confusing from Google Hangouts, and they have Google Chat, And they're starting to combine these all into one product. But you'll notice, and I have a screenshot of it here, it is actually getting pretty easy. It's getting easier. And they just made this Google Meet free, at least until September 30th. And then after that, it'll become a part of G Suite if you have a G Suite account for your business. If not, there may be a charge for it. Maybe it won't be available to individuals anymore. But if I pull up my email over here, you can just see on the side that right in this area, just like the screenshot on the slideshow, I can just click on this and start a meeting, or I can join a meeting. And when you do that, it pulls up a little thing, and this is the address, but I click, let me click on that, actually, it does it, handles it just a little different. I can start a meeting, hopefully it won't interfere with my camera, and then you can have people join. Now the one experience, or the best experience I've had with Google is I was able to transition from my desktop, had to go get in my car and go somewhere, and it did seamlessly go over to my phone, which seems to be difficult for some of these applications. But the smoothest experience I had with doing that transition was with Google Meet. So, all right, and you're probably already using, I'd say a big percentage of us are already using Gmail or G Suite, which is essentially the same thing. So that's already there, it's available, and for right now it's free and easy. So a good option. And they have, so the thing that's, you probably used chat, and it's, the chat's a little bit different than we'll see as we look at Slack and RingCentral. It's a little more, as far as I've seen, you know, you're just chatting with one person at a time. I'm not sure how they handle Teams and different things like that. But again, Google's got this whole suite, and they're finally adding Meet and trying to catch up with Zoom. Although they've had some conferencing solutions available for a long time, getting them to talk together and work together efficiently for our businesses is maybe something that they're a little bit later to, even though they have awesome stuff. And I say that, and like I said, I've been on Gmail since 2004, and G Suite, the version of G Suite, since 2007 or 2008. Oh, there we go. So now the other thing is Slack. Slack's like the perfect chat tool. Not everybody loves it, but it works. And let's see, let me get this to go out so I can get over here. I can't get this screen. Hold on. So here's a chat room that I'm a part of from a remote work class I took, and it's awesome. The theory in Slack is, and they're chat first, and this is one of the, Slack's probably the easiest entry point tool for collaboration that there is. It's one of the first services of the market to show us the value of instant messaging and file sharing for collaboration. It really does make digital teamwork feel completely natural. And they base it on channels here. So we'll talk a little bit in the one we use. It's more on Teams, and it's kind of just a different way of describing it. But I do love how Slack works, where you have the channels, and you can actually share channels with other companies, and it gives you a pretty comprehensive way to chat back and forth. And as we talk a little bit more about communications, depending on your communications guidelines in your company, will kind of dictate how you use chat, what priority it takes, but it's a great way to talk quickly back and forth. It's not the number one priority. It's not something you should just watch all the time, like we said you shouldn't do on email, but it is something, a good way to send quick messages and talk back and forth for short conversations. So Slack gives you one fact that our program doesn't have is threaded replies. So if I click on any of these messages, I can actually reply directly to that message, and it breaks off into different conversations. So it's a little bit easier to keep track of sub conversations, and that's called threading, which our chat app doesn't do, and I hate it, but we haven't switched yet, and might not, because we like some of the other features. So that's Slack. We don't use it as a company, but you can switch workspaces. So I have one for that remote work class for programming language I follow, and just one I created for our company as part of this presentation. And that has no activity in it. And you can kind of see when you create a new one, the different things that you can do. So channels, and again, there's direct messages and chat, and I'll explain that a little more when we get to the application that my company uses. But the philosophy is essentially the same with those. Now, RingCentral. This is the one I'm going to tell you the most about. And like I said, we use it. We have since 2014. They've done a great job of keeping up. They started as a business class VoIP system, voice grade VoIP, like replaced our phone system. We've had great success with it. Because of that, we've stuck with them for the chat and the video messaging also. But it does give, and this is why we originally got it, you have an auto attendant, so you call in and you hear our auto attendant. You can do a dial by name directory. You can, all the stuff, your voicemails, and we all have our own DID, our direct inward dial number. So my 35 employees, they all have their own phone number where you can call them directly, or you can call the main line and navigate to them through a dial by name directory or whatever's easiest. So exactly what you think when you want a good voicemail type, you know, platform for phone calls. On top of that, over the years, they've added the other things that we've talked about. And I'm going to pull this up and let you have a look at this if I can, and without getting into too much here, but you can kind of see our system here. And over here is where we start a meeting. So we can click on there and start a video meeting. And actually this was based until about a month ago when they switched. Their video platform was based on the Zoom platform, the same technology Zoom uses. And they've kind of branched that off and done it a little bit different. But we have the ability here to join video call, and then also down here, regular phone call. So no matter where I'm at, and I use the computer phone. So I take my computer home and I'm able to start a call really easy from here. Dial any of these, you can see my call history and missed calls, call recordings, so the voicemail and everything. And we even have on a page here, on my pages, I've got this little thing here where I can pull up a phone, dial any number I want right there. And if there's a phone number on the page, actually, when I hover over it, it pulls up my phone and I can dial that. And that's just like a business phone line. It's my line with my number, or I can have it actually show the company number. So they dial in and hit my extension, and that's how they get to me. It is very powerful. It's worked well for us. And again, you got the chats. They call them teams here instead of channels. I have direct messages. And then I have down here, we have different teams. And you can see numbers of messages and different stuff like that. And we do use it heavily. I have let's see what I did with that. But they also provide some stats for us and different things, so I can kind of go and see how many phone calls are being made, number of messages, and stuff like that. It's really nice to have everything. Another thing is faxes. Many of you probably don't use faxes. We do just a little bit. Every now and then a company will send us one. I don't think we send hardly any, but you can do online faxes. And this is a good example of a UCaaS, a Unified Communications as a Service. It combines everything. Now, to be fair, all of those others that we reviewed, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and to a lesser extent, kind of, although they do it, it just doesn't seem as integrated, Google Meet, you do get, they're starting to add phone calling ability and everything. So everything you need for communication does end up in these packages, and they all do a pretty good job of it. All right, so best practices for web and video conferencing. I wanted to go over this just a little bit. And I think we still have about 5 or 10 minutes, right, Madeline? So try not to hurry too fast and not go over time.
No, you're just fine, David.
Okay, so some of the things for web and video conferences that I just wrote down that seem to pop up the most, of course, is appropriate clothing. You can get away, right? And you get these jokes. The guy from not Friends, but The Office wearing the shorts, you know, it's just what you can see up here, and that's true. But just make sure you're wearing appropriate calling, not overdressed, not underdressed, although overdressed is a little bit better. And then good lighting, so that some of you I can see just great. Mine's a little shaded on the one side. I should probably open my window, but good lighting so that they can see you. And then the whole thing about muting your microphone that Madeline addressed at the beginning, that's important, especially in a big meeting. But then not forgetting to unmute too. So you got to mute it, you got to be ready and not forget to unmute it. And if you're distracted, you're on a video conference, people can tell, even if you're probably looking just a little to the side, they can probably tell that you're a little distracted. So be careful about that. And a couple more things, just spend some time looking at the camera. That's hard for me because it's just a little camera right up here. It's a lot easier and funner to look at your pictures over here, which is not too far off, but it's a little bit off. And I could slide those up here where they're a little bit closer to the camera, but this is still not this, right? So they do, although I have heard some people, Seth Godin has a little bit of a different take on some of this, but lots of different opinions. But those are a few best practices that I think are important. And I do like the one about use video meetings whenever possible, because body language is a key part, and it's so easy now. Any of these applications will let you pull up a video thing right away. and you can talk. It's easy. You can talk to your employees, to your customers, whatever you want. But especially internally, as now we're working remotely, where we used to be face to face a lot more often. I mean, especially with your employees and team members, pull up a video call, get in the habit, set some communication guidelines for your company that it's video first. And then if that, video first, why not? It's about the same thing as a phone call, but a little bit cooler. And I think people, the biggest problem we had before the virus was people hate to see themselves on the screen. I just hate it. You just don't look right? Plus, sometimes you're up close and sometimes you put it back here. It just doesn't seem to work, but it does work and it's fine because that's what they're seeing of you in real life anyways, right? And you don't want to smother the camera. I've heard that too. I mean, you're not when you're talking to somebody, you're not like this far away from each other. So a comfortable amount of space between you and the camera so you don't overwhelm the person on the other side is a good thing. All right. So some communication guidelines. I mean, this is the key to making all of this work. It really is you have to have those. And it's important, especially within companies, that if you don't tell your employees what to expect, from chat or email or video, they're not going to use video because they don't want to. But if that's your policy, that's video first, they're going to try a little harder. And if you say, okay, you don't have to answer email within 5 minutes, then they're not gonna, and they shouldn't be. But if you have this expectation, you're micromanaging because that's what you did when they were in the office, or micromanaging yourself, then that could get overwhelming. But with some guidelines, you can make this a lot easier. And I like, there's from Evernote, link that I got from that remote work class, is they have a few things that I just wanted to mention here that makes it interesting. First, think of email if it's needed. If email is needed, then talk before the email is sent, and send email if needed. And don't discuss via email. No scrolling. If you're scrolling through an email, it's getting too long. How many of you have had threads go on for 50, 55, 60? And Gmail does pretty good. It can only show you the last one, but that's getting to be a little bit too much. And then, when using chat, you don't have to instantly reply. The communication order that Evernote uses is call text, which to me is call video, video call or text, or call either way with video or without, preferably video. And then Slack, which is their chat that they use, whether it's RingCentral's chat or chatting on Microsoft Teams or chat. And then email is the last one. And then starting and stopping meetings on time. There's an ideal balance of communication on a remote team, mostly asynchronous with some synchronous communication. Maintaining this ratio ensures you sidestep issues with synchronous communication and gain all the benefits of the asynchronous communication. Building a remote company that's asynchronous first will be the key to success as a distributed team. It's really overwhelming for these people working at home if you just want them to answer everything right away, right away. And that's really bad in the office too. For us, we did have 75, I think about 70% of us worked in the office, but we're split up between 3 suites here. And so it was somewhat sort of remote anyways. And the more pressure, the more stuff that can be done not immediately, asynchronously, the better. If you can manage your workflow so that things get done that need to get done asynchronously, that's the best. And then that saves the time for the stuff that needs to be done right now synchronously. Then hopefully the less of that the better, and you've got time for that because you've got all this stuff, you've got your workflows and setup, so asynchronously works most of the time. All right, I wanted to mention one more thing, which really isn't conferencing, but it is collaboration. And it makes such a big difference for our team because of the email overload that seems to happen on a personal and company level. We use a product called Help Scout. There are all alternatives like Zendesk, Zoho Desk, Intercom Live Agent. But what this does is it puts a team of people into an email inbox. And so if you got these email inboxes that just have hundreds of different emails, and let's see if I can find it. But anyways, you get hundreds of emails into like a support@yourcompany.com or customer service@yourcompany.com. You're just being inundated with all these emails. And I've seen people do it with their personal emails too, or not your personal, but your company, like my company email, you can put them into these team shared boxes and it all comes in, but you can have 10 people watching this box and any one of them can arbitrage or answer those. And it does have their name on it, but it comes and goes from the same address. Works great for us for support at constructionmonitor.com. If you email into that box, my customer support staff will answer it. And I could have 2 people watching it, 4 people watching it, 10 people watching it. It's great. You can add notes on there. So something comes in, you got to talk about it with internally. You can add notes and then respond. You keep all the communication as far as email. You keep it all in one place. So if you're having to do a lot of email still, and I can't talk you out of finding another way, but sometimes email with your customers is the only way. Not always, but then this is an option to handle a little bit more. And they do have a knowledge base and live chat type things. So there's some good applications out there for that. That's an important one we use for collaboration. So I wanted to mention that. All right, real quick as we're finishing up, pricing. And so this is just kind of an overview of some of the prices of the different applications. Almost all of them have a free, in fact, I think they all have a free version except for maybe RingCentral because they're kind of you buy a phone line and you get everything else with it. But you got Microsoft Teams and $5, $10, $20 per user per month, depending on which version of the Office suite you go with. And for us, most of us, I don't know, some of you probably have big businesses. For most of us small businesses, usually that first level is enough. Not always. Google Meet, same thing. If you're, per user 6, 12, and 25 per user per month, that's bundled with the various editions of G Suite. So you pay $6 to get G Suite per user, and you're going to get Google Meet with that. But for right now, you're getting it for free. But after September 30th, I assume that's what it'll be like. Zoom, there's a free version. You can do unlimited one-on-one meetings. Any group meetings are capped at 40 minutes. And they have some other restrictions. You can go to their homepage and see that. But for $14.99, you start losing those restrictions and you get the ability to do more. And then webinar adds on additional. There's lots of different things you can add on there. The phone, $10, and the webinar, $40. So when you add that on, it starts becoming more like a RingCentral type thing where $19.99, 24 different levels, but you get a phone line with that. And then Slack, $667, $12.50. Now Slack's usually, they say in the thing, it's the most expensive because that only includes a chat feature, although they may be adding the phone feature. All right, so which one's best for you? This is just my summary of what is best for you. Microsoft Teams, it's a viable option if you're an organization and you're already standardized, a business or a school already standardized on that. Zoom is easy with widespread adoption. If you're not sure, I'd probably just stick with Zoom if you're just looking for video conferencing and talking back and forth. Google Meet is easy. Then you get the whole productivity of the G Suite. Most of us are using that, or at least familiar with the Gmail applications. And then RingCentral, and then if you want everything, including your phone system in one package, I'd recommend that. And Slack, everybody's heard of Slack. Seems like, they've heard of Slack for chat and Zoom for video. They can work together, or they both have their separate chat and video features too. All right, a couple other things I wanted to mention, and I know that one of the other presenters, at least, I think is going to go over Asana. So I'm just going to mention the 2 other tools that we use for collaboration. And that's Atlassian, which includes Jira and Confluence. Jira is kind of a ticketing thing. We use it for some major to-do, long-range, big tasks, and then my development team uses it. That's the main part of their production is the Jira side of it. And Confluence we use for our systems documentation. We do have all of our business documentation in there. And then Asana. We just beat up Asana, especially in one of my departments. And here's a calendar. You can't even see all the tasks on there, but Asana is great for to-dos and managing some workflow. And again, these applications are getting so smart and good. They're doing multiple things, but Asana I use on a personal level for just individual daily tasks and things. And then I got a whole team that shares it for gathering information from 3,000 different cities across the country for us. And that's all I have. So I'll turn it over. Hope it wasn't too long or too short. There's my email address if anybody's interested and has any questions further on how we use these tools. Happy to answer them. So now I guess we'll open it up for questions if there are any, Madeline.
David, thank you so much for your presentation. I love that we learned so much about the different tools out there that we can use to start conferencing. We did have a question come in from Samantha Thompson. She says, how frequently do you recommend doing team check-in meetings with your team while working remotely?
That's a great question. And since we've always, my development team's a good example. They have this, what they call a stand-up meeting once a week. And I meet with my managers, and I did this before, and I do it remotely. I meet with my managers once a week. So I think at a minimum once a week, and there's been a lot of talk out there, and we actually have a second meeting which overlaps, isn't the same one. But we do an all hands on deck meeting once a week too. So if you ask my employees, they're getting at least 2 meetings a week, one with me or their manager, and an all hands on meeting. And so, I think that's how we do it. We do it at least once a week. And then during this virus times, we've had another meeting in there. Just if anybody has any specific questions, you kind of give them guidance on how we're doing through the whole COVID-19 thing.
Great. And if there's any other questions, please feel free to type them into the chat box and I'll ask them. I do have a few questions of my own, David. So do you recommend, especially as we're in this remote work world, creating a communication plan with your team before really start implementing these products?
Yeah, I think it's vital because that'll help you identify not only which is the best tool, but man, it'll make a difference for your team members, because if they don't know what to expect, they're going to be overwhelmed and even exhausted. You know, here they are in a different environment. Right now, the hard thing is, you know, with the kids home from school, some of them are juggling kids a little more than they would have to under normal circumstances. So if they think they have to respond to you immediately in chat or email or anything, that's going to stress them out. But if they know, if you have guidelines like, okay, email, don't expect, you know, it's all right to answer within 24 hours. Chat, it's all right to answer within 4 hours. And if it's really important, then call or video, then they're gonna relax. They're gonna be able to do the work that they're assigned, and not have to worry about the communication thing and be overwhelmed by it. So I think that is a key to not only the success of remote work in general, but to the success of these tools and identifying which tool is going to best work for you and your team.
Great, thank you. Shane asks, how do you get your employees to commit to using apps like Asana?
You make them, I mean, you got to set an example. First of all, you don't decide and then change. That's a big thing, is changing. And as soon as you pick one, the other app's gonna add a beautiful feature that you just feel like you can't live without. But you just got to have some continuity. And if you have a communication guideline, like, you know, in the Evernotes, it says, you know, Slack's number 2. If you identify the apps that you use in your communication guidelines, that will help too, especially once they see buy-in from you as their leader. Then they'll get on it. Some of them resistantly. Some of them have probably been using Slack, and if you don't choose Slack, you know, they're not going to love the other one. But you get yourself, and if you have managers, you know, get some buy-in from some key players, and then be patient and loving.
Perfect. So Lindison Webb asks, does your company provide some training for using these tools? And then a follow-up, was ease of use or intuitiveness considerations for tools over functionality?
Yeah, so we don't provide training. I usually turn to my development team when we need internal training. We don't. So is ease of use or functionality? That's a good question, and that's always a trade-off, because if it's too hard, your team won't adapt well to it. But if it doesn't have the functionality, you're wasting your time. So this is what every single one of these applications are trying to create and sell to you, is a combination of both ease of use and functionality. And if you got to choose between one or the other, I mean, ease of use doesn't matter if it doesn't function like you need it to. So, but if it functions like you need it to and you can't figure it out, that's a little bit of a killer too. But probably a bigger killer is if it doesn't have the functionality that you need.
Great, thank you. Okay, I've got one other question from Kirby McDonald. He says, what kind of features have helped you the most in your business?
Yeah, good question. So the phone system, I mean, that was the first thing that really made a huge difference for us. It was, you know, we had a phone system. The way I used to do it in the old days was like you'd buy 8 lines and I'd have 20 people using those 8 lines, and usually that's okay because not 2 people, I mean, you just don't have, not all your people are using the phone at the same time. But when we switched to the phone system, the key thing for us was everybody got their own phone number. Everybody could be on the phone at the same time. So that was one of the key features that really made a huge difference for us. And then I'd say the next thing was the chat. And kind of chat eliminated a little bit of the email for us. And so, but it can also get unwieldy, and I've seen that. And man, my sales team, you know how salespeople are. They're always joking around. I mean, they're just talking about everything. They're posting funny memes and stuff. But it's made a difference. It kind of keeps them, they're not all in the office either, so it keeps them a cohesive team. And I've seen that it has that chat feature, supervised well has been a big one for us. And we haven't got, until recently, we haven't got into a lot of the video for some of the reasons I mentioned that, people do not want to be seen on video. And so that was hard, and we never really had adapted to that until now. But yeah, the phones, the phones and the chat have really made a difference to us. And then for my development team, that Jira thing too, that made a huge thing. That's how they track all their code and tickets on their code. Specifically for my development team, Jira was I can't imagine if we hadn't come across that when we did. That's been that's not for everybody. That's a development team, right? But man, it's been awesome.
Thank you again, David. I'm not seeing any other questions come through. Does anyone else have questions? Oh, we got one more question. Spencer Douglas asks, have you specifically trained your teams on communication etiquette, or is it implied?
Good question. Unfortunately, mostly implied, but that is a great and important question because, and it's hard to train. It is hard to train, but it's important to train them too. And so since we've been around for so long, and a lot of my people we do hire and we have hired, but since we've had so many that have been with me for so long, I think we've cheated the system in a bad way. I mean, cheated ourselves and just implying that they're going to pick this up as they go. And if they don't, then my dev team's going to cuss them and they'll figure it out through the school of hard knocks. But that's a great question. And hopefully, I think it's important that teams are trained. If nothing else, you have the documentation that can provide the training. When you onboard them, they know where to go to get answers like that. Your documentation can make all the difference in the world and streamline that communication and help them understand what is expected of them.
So I've just been asked to make sure that if you have logged in, that you put your name on the screen so we can take your attendance. So I think that kind of wraps it up for the questions. Unless anyone else has burning questions, we are at 12:46, so we are 1 minute over, but not too bad. But thank you so much again, David, for joining us. Thank you to our participants. Y'all asked wonderful questions and were engaged in this discussion. I think it's really important. I do have a comment that just came through from Spencer Douglas. Nothing shows how things should work better than hiring a new person who is confused. That is so true. I can't agree with that anymore. I've been in that boat before. So thank you for that comment there, Spencer. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.